So before the court judgment came out, and before the entire thing became highly emotional and politicized, what was the various steps taken by various political parties to make sure that an agreement, an arrangement can be made outside the court? And have you had any experience of certain paths being taken in that direction?
Right, well, I was a close witness to the efforts of a number of scholars to establish the entire corpus of evidence and to collect more evidence than had until then been known. And the occasion for that, well, there was the ongoing debate in the newspapers, but then there was an official forum set up by the government of Chandrasekhar in the autumn of 1990, where scholars mandated by the Vishwa Hindu Parishad and by the Babri Masjid Action Committee were to meet and see if there was any common ground among scholars about the historical facts pertaining to the case. Now, in the first round, the people of the Babri Masjid Action Committee themselves were there, totally unprepared. They had with them a collection of newspaper articles which had no value as evidence at all, just opinion. And it was quite funny because you see, one article said, but in reality Rama was born in Afghanistan. And someone said, no. Another article said, no, he was born in Andhra Pradesh. And someone said, no, he was born in Nepal. And somebody said, but he didn't exist, he was not born anywhere. And you see, each of these pieces of evidence is introduced with the statement, this proves that Rama was born in Afghanistan. This proves that Rama was born in Andhra Pradesh. This proves that Rama was born in Nepal. So it seems that it didn't dawn on them that Rama cannot have been born in all these different places. Or alternatively, if he could be born in 7 different places, then certainly he could also have been born in Ayodhya. So you see, they simply didn't understand anything about historical scholarship. I mean, they were these theologians living in their own world of religion. So that was painful for them. And of course the secularist historians had told them, but you see, these Hindus, it's all mythology. You see, they have no evidence. You don't have to be afraid of them. But you see that the scholars mandated by the Vishwa Hindu Parishad came well prepared. They did have some evidence with them. So then you see, the Babri Masjid Action Committee's strategy was in disarray. And then it was Professor Irfan Habib who helped them. And then a team was put together with Dian Jha, Athar Ali, R.S. Sharma, and I think Suraj Bhan. At any rate, 4 historians, 4 established academics. And they did try to prepare a case, which later on they also put together in a booklet. You see, in fact, what happened then was that the first meeting, you see, they simply exchanged pieces of papers and got to know each other and so on. And then a second meeting was planned in sometime late January 91, where they would then really discuss the evidence that had been exchanged. But on that second meeting, the Babri Masjid Action Committee scholars did not show up. But that doesn't mean they really gave up, because they later brought out a booklet, Historians Report to the Nation, where they gave their argumentation. But I say argumentation and not evidence, because in fact the booklet contains no evidence at all. You see, what it amounts to is simply to try to belittle or at least a select few of the pieces of evidence given by the pro-temple scholars. It does not give any indication for an alternative scenario. You see, an alternative scenario would have been, for example, let's say there was no building at the site. There was a forest, And we know that Baba or some Muslim ruler, he went by there and he said, oh, you see, when I'm in this forest, I feel so religious, I want to pray here, a mosque should be built here. And he finds out, you see, there's a local landowner who is the owner of this forest. And so they make a contract, you see, sales contract. Baba buys this land from Mr. Thakur for this many rupees and so on. And that document somehow has survived, so we know that this land was bought. You see that there was a forest on it, and that the mosque was built on virgin land. But there is no such document. And there is, I mean, that would of course be the perfect document for the Babri Masjid case. But you see, even anything of a lesser nature is not there. There is no argument whatsoever, there is no evidence whatsoever for an alternative scenario from the one on which there was a consensus until about 2 years ago in Jamia Millia, a Muslim university in Delhi. I met a number of these Muslim intellectuals, like for example Ali Asghar Engineer. You see, I have lambasted Ali Asghar Engineer or Asghar Ali Engineer in my writings. But then you see, when I actually met him in person, I kind of liked him. And I insist on mentioning him here because he has at some point during the debate also said that, you know, perhaps Muslims should let go of the site. If it is that important to Hindus, well, maybe we should be generous. In fact, even Syed Shahabuddin has said this at some point. Of course, he added the condition, you see, if it is proven that there was a temple at the site, then Muslims should, you know, leave it. And of course, the proof has been given by now, so I hope that Shahabuddin has the courage of his conviction and will say publicly, you see, we should not proceed to the Supreme Court, we should not try to annul this verdict, we should simply accept that the contentious site belongs to the Hindus. But at any rate, somebody like Asghar Ali Engineer is quite level-headed man. And you see, on this issue at any rate, he spoke in a very moderate voice. Why is that moderate voice of Muslims not taken into account by all these secularist busybodies who insist that any settlement, any verdict should be as anti-Hindu, as humiliating for the Hindu side as possible, when in fact there are Muslims around who are willing to come to a reasonable settlement. So it's very important to see this, you see. The secularists always prefer the Muslim hardliners. Like now apparently the Sunni Waqf board, who had initially shown a reasonable face and said, you see, whatever the verdict, we will abide by it. Now, of course, they are not accepting the verdict, just as the secularists themselves are up in arms against the verdict.
This was also the case with some of the other Muslim political leaders, like Mr. Owaisi, also in various talk shows agreed to accept the verdict, whatever it may be, has now completely rejected the verdict and has called for an appeal. And so is the case with a lot of other secularists who agreed to accept whatever it was. But
that indicates that they expected the ruling to be in their favor. They expected the judges to say, Hindus shall not build a temple at this site. They should not worship at the site which they believe is the birthplace of Ram.
In fact, there have been people who have even outrightly trashed the ASI report on their research, where they used ground penetrating radar and did some very path-breaking research because of the seriousness of the whole issue. People have gone and rejected the ASI report. What do you say to such a very respected organization which is being rejected or being called an handmaiden of the Hindus?
Well, of course, the Archaeological Survey of India had expected that reaction. So preemptively, they have employed as many Muslims as possible in the excavations. Then, secondly, no matter who performed the excavations, you see the results are there. I mean, all these religious artifacts have been dug up. apart from those that were already in full view when the masjid was still standing and it had been incorporated there. The foundations of a very large building have been found. And this in the place of honor in a city of pilgrimage. I mean, even without finding all the religious artifacts, you should wonder, what else could it have been than a temple? It could have been a royal palace, but of course Rama as a prince should have been born in a royal palace. A temple for Rama is conceived as some kind of a royal palace. At any rate, you see, something very strange should have happened historically if there had not been a temple there. And then you see, we don't have to rely on such theoretical constructions. We have all the evidence, apart from all the testimonies in the documentary evidence that was discussed by the scholars in 1990. We have plentiful archaeological evidence. So the attempts to explain that away, when you look at them closely, are very bizarre and very funny. In fact, I looked at them closely here in this book, Ayodhya, the Finale, Science versus Secularism in the Excavations Debate. That was written shortly after the excavations, when you had all the furious reactions. You see, these constructions are so funny. Or, for example, the one about the animal bones. So they found animal bones there. This proves it cannot be a Hindu temple because Hindus are vegetarians and they quit animal sacrifice, 2,000 years ago. Well, you see, after this temple was demolished, well, who knows? You see, first of all, the soldiers who demolished it may have had a barbecue to celebrate and not cleaned up their mess. Or you see, it may have been just lying there for a while and the animals, were grazing there, whatever. I mean, the site has many layers and there is no problem at all that among the ruins, at some point, animals have lived and died there. So these arguments mean nothing. I mean, the opponents are really clutching at straws. It is pitiable to look at them now. They clearly had not expected this. It is as if they really believed the very contrived arguments with which they were trying to counter the evidence. You see, the Uttarakhand, the last book of the Ramayana, has been added later, when caste relations in India had hardened considerably. See, originally, to the extent that there was caste, it was a much more fluid thing. But then you see, maybe around the start of the Common Era, you get a hardening of caste relations, and that is reflected in the last layer of the Ramayana. Initially you see Rama, you see fraternizing with tribals and so on, and it seems to be no problem. Then at the end, suddenly, the text becomes very caste conscious, and in a very cruel manner too. So you see, that reflects a hardening of caste relations. So there, we have to historicize the text. See how the text itself has a history reflecting successive stages of society. However, what politicians have to do is to respect this existing tradition, just like they expect Christian beliefs, just like they expect Muslim beliefs. They don't ask Muslims to prove that Abraham built the Kaaba, or that Muhammad actually flew on a winged horse to Jerusalem, or that the voice that he heard and that dictated to him the Quran was really the voice of the Archangel Gabriel. Nobody asks for this proof. You see, if we play the game of religious pluralism, then we don't ask too closely. We respect these beliefs.